I remember the first time they came, the sky tore open, not with fire or fury, but with a sound, a low, resonant hum that vibrated in your chest like the drop of a bass line you didn't know was coming. The ships were sleek, blacker than the void itself, and they hovered over our cities like silent judges. They didn't come to destroy us, though. No, that would have been too simple. They came to test us. The Zixtari, as they called themselves, or at least that's how our translators rendered it, were an ancient race, older than our oldest myths. They had no eyes, no mouths, no discernible faces at all. Just tall, spindly forms wrapped in shimmering exosuits that pulsed faintly with light. They communicated through sound and vibration, their voices a symphony of tones that made your ears ring and your heart skip beats. They claimed they had been watching us for centuries, studying us as one might study an anthill. And now, they said, the time had come to determine if humanity was worthy of joining the Galactic Accord. Their challenge was simple: prove we had something unique to offer the universe, something no other species could replicate, something that wasn't war or greed or destruction. Because trust me, they'd seen enough of that from countless other civilizations before us. If we failed, well, they didn't say it outright, but the implication hung heavy in the air: extinction. World leaders scrambled. Scientists proposed technological marvels. Philosophers waxed poetic about human creativity and resilience. None of it impressed the Zixtari. These are echoes, their harmonic voices intoned, reflections of what we have already witnessed elsewhere. And then someone, no one knows exactly who, had an idea so absurd it should have been laughed out of every room it entered. But desperation breeds audacity, and audacity has always been humanity's secret weapon. Let's throw them a rave. At first, people thought it was a joke. A rave? For aliens? But the more we thought about it, the more it made sense. Music was universal, or at least we hoped it was, and no one did music quite like humans. We didn't just listen to it. We lived it. We let it consume us, transform us, unite us in ways that defied logic or language. And raves? Raves were the purest distillation of that essence, a chaotic explosion of sound and light and raw emotion that could turn strangers into family for a few fleeting hours. The plan came together faster than anyone expected. The United Nations declared an emergency global holiday, Rave Day, as it came to be known, and every major city on Earth began preparations for what would be the biggest party in human history. DJs from every corner of the globe were flown in. Warehouses were converted into neon-lit sanctuaries. Entire power grids were rerouted to fuel the colossal sound systems being assembled. When the night finally arrived, the Zixtari descended upon Earth en masse. Their ships hovered low over our cities, their forms shimmering like heat waves as they emerged to witness what we had prepared for them. I was there in Berlin, one of the chosen epicenters of this planetary spectacle, and I'll never forget what happened when the first beat dropped. It started with a single pulse, a deep, resonant thud that seemed to come from everywhere at once. The crowd erupted in cheers as lasers sliced through the darkness, painting the night sky with colors I didn't even know existed. The bass hit next, a rolling wave of sound so powerful you could feel it in your bones. And then came the melody, a cascading symphony of synths and samples and human voices that rose higher and higher until it felt like the entire universe was singing along. The Zixtari froze. Their shimmering forms flickered erratically, as if something inside them had short-circuited. For a moment, I thought we'd made a terrible mistake, that maybe our music was too much for them to handle. But then they started to move. It wasn't dancing, not at first, but there was a rhythm to it nonetheless. Their bodies swayed and pulsed in time with the music, their lights flashing brighter and faster with each passing second. The crowd went wild, cheering and clapping and throwing their hands in the air, as if they were welcoming old friends back home. And then something incredible happened. The Zixtari began to sing. Their voices weren't like ours. They didn't have chords or lyrics or anything you could hum along to, but they harmonized with our music in ways that defied explanation. It was like hearing two halves of a whole finally come together after eons apart. For hours, maybe even days, time lost all meaning. We danced and sang and celebrated together under the stars. The barriers between us dissolved into nothingness as humans and aliens alike became one with the music. When it was over, when the last note faded into silence and dawn began to break over the horizon, the Zix-3 spoke again. "You are unique," they said simply before boarding their ships and vanishing into the cosmos without another word. No one knew what would happen next, whether they'd return someday or if we'd ever hear from them again. But one thing was certain. Humanity had passed their test not with weapons or wisdom, but with something far more powerful. We showed them our soul. And for once in our chaotic history, it was enough. The Zix-3 returned, but not as conquerors or judges. They came as students, as seekers, drawn back to Earth by the echoes of that first night. Something had shifted within them during the rave, a transformation they themselves struggled to articulate. Their once monolithic culture, defined by cold logic and harmonic efficiency, had been cracked open by the raw, chaotic energy of human music. For the first time in eons, they felt something akin to curiosity, not the detached analysis of a superior species, but a deep yearning to understand and experience more. They began to ask questions, not about our technology or politics, but about our art, our rituals, our festivals. They wanted to know why we danced until dawn, why we painted our faces and bodies with neon streaks, why we let the music take us to places words could never reach. And so we showed them. In cities across the globe, humans hosted raves specifically for the Zix-3. We taught them how to move, not with their rigid precision but with abandon, letting the beat guide them instead of their minds. We introduced them to the concept of improvisation, of losing oneself in the moment. At first, their attempts were awkward, almost mechanical, but slowly they began to adapt. Their exosuits, once uniform and utilitarian, started to glow with vibrant colors that pulsed in time with the music. They developed their own forms of expression, intricate light patterns that danced across their forms like living tattoos, harmonics that wove into our melodies in ways no human could replicate. It was as if they were remixing themselves in real time, blending their alien essence with ours. And then came the day they invited us to their homeworld. The Zix-3 planet was unlike anything we'd imagined. It was a place of stark beauty, endless plains of shimmering crystal under skies that shifted hues like a living aurora. Their cities were vast and symmetrical, designed for function rather than form. But there was no warmth to it, no soul. It was a world that reflected its creators, brilliant but sterile. That changed when we arrived. The first rave on Zix-3 was held in one of their great amphitheaters, a colossal structure carved from a single piece of translucent stone that refracted light into rainbows with every pulse of sound. The Zix-3 had prepared meticulously, replicating Earth's sound systems and light shows with uncanny precision. But when the music started and the humans began to dance, it became clear that something was missing. It wasn't until one of our DJs, a scrappy kid from Detroit named Maya, took over that things truly began. She didn't just play music. She created it on the spot, layering beats and samples in a way that defied logic, but felt undeniably right. Her energy was infectious, her passion palpable. The humans followed her lead, moving as one under the alien sky. And then something extraordinary happened. The Zix-3 joined in. At first, they mimicked us, awkwardly swaying and shifting their forms in time with the beat. But as the night wore on, they began to find their own rhythm. Their lights grew brighter and more complex. Their harmonics resonated deeper. By dawn, it was no longer clear where human ended and Zix-3 began. Together, we created something entirely new, a fusion of cultures that transcended both. The impact on their society was profound. For millennia, the Zix-3 had operated as a monoculture, a single-minded entity focused solely on survival and advancement. Individuality was suppressed. Creativity was seen as inefficient. But now they had tasted chaos and found it intoxicating. Raves became a cornerstone of their culture, not just as entertainment, but as a form of communal expression and growth. They built massive arenas dedicated to these events, each one more elaborate than the last. They experimented with soundscapes and light shows that pushed the boundaries of perception itself. They even developed new technologies inspired by our music, devices that could translate emotions into sound waves or project visual representations of thought patterns onto vast screens. More importantly, they began to change on a fundamental level. The rigid hierarchies that had defined their society for eons started to crumble as individuality took root among them. Artists emerged. True artists who created not for utility, but for beauty's sake alone. Philosophers debated the meaning of joy and freedom in ways that would have been unthinkable before. And through it all, they credited humanity for opening their eyes, or whatever it was they used to perceive, to this new way of being. But not everyone among them embraced this transformation willingly. The Zixtari, once a race defined by their cold efficiency, had become our most fervent admirers. They didn't just enjoy our music, they revered it. To them, humanity wasn't merely another sentient species. We were the architects of joy, the emissaries of chaos turned harmony. They began calling us the keepers of the pulse, a title that spread across their networks like wildfire. It was a name that carried weight, a recognition of what we had unknowingly gifted them, the ability to feel alive. Word of our raves spread far beyond Zixter. The Zixtari, now self-appointed ambassadors of human culture, took it upon themselves to share their newfound passion with other civilizations in the Galactic Accord. They traveled to distant worlds, bringing with them recordings of our music and holograms of our dance floors. But no recording could ever capture the essence of a true rave. The sweat, the heat, the raw energy that coursed through a crowd like an electric current. And so they began inviting other species to Earth. At first, it was just a trickle, curious diplomats and scientists from neighboring systems who wanted to see what all the fuss was about. But once they experienced it for themselves, they couldn't stop talking about it. They returned to their homeworlds with stories of humans who danced until their legs gave out, who laughed and cried and embraced strangers as if they were lifelong friends. They spoke of lights that painted the skies and bass lines that seemed to resonate with the very fabric of existence. Soon, Earth became a galactic hotspot, not for trade or diplomacy or war, but for celebration. Alien ships filled our skies, their occupants descending onto our planet in droves to partake in what they now called the Great Human Ritual. Every weekend, cities across the globe transformed into interstellar festivals. Streets were lined with food stalls serving everything from tacos to synthesized protein cubes. Parks were converted into open-air dance floors where humans and aliens alike moved together under pulsating strobes. The diversity was staggering. There were species with bioluminescent skin that glowed brighter as the tempo increased, creatures with tentacles that rippled like waves in perfect sync with the music, beings whose bodies emitted low-frequency hums that added an otherworldly layer to every track. Each new arrival brought something unique to the table, enriching the experience in ways we could never have imagined. But it wasn't just about the parties. The raves became a bridge, a way for species who might otherwise have viewed each other with suspicion or indifference to connect on a deeper level. Language barriers melted away on the dance floor. Cultural differences became irrelevant in the face of shared euphoria. For the first time in galactic history, beings from countless worlds came together not out of necessity or fear, but out of pure, unadulterated joy. The Zixtari took this mission further than anyone expected. They began lobbying within the Galactic Accord to have humanity officially recognized as the universal custodians of celebration. It was an unprecedented move. No species had ever been honored for something so seemingly trivial, but their argument was compelling. They claimed that humanity's ability to create and share happiness was as valuable as any technological advancement or resource. To bolster their case, they organized what would come to be known as the Infinite Festival. Held on Zixter itself, it was designed to showcase everything humanity had to offer, not just music and dance, but art, cuisine, fashion, and storytelling. Delegates from every member species of the Accord were invited, along with millions of ordinary citizens from across the galaxy. The festival was unlike anything anyone had ever seen. Entire continents were transformed into sprawling venues, crystalline deserts lit by massive holographic displays, floating platforms suspended above oceans that shimmered like liquid light, underground caverns filled with bioluminescent fungi that pulsed in time with the music. Human DJs performed alongside alien musicians, creating soundscapes that defied description. Chefs from Earth collaborated with extraterrestrial culinarians to craft dishes that blended flavors no one had thought possible. And at the heart of it all were the raves, colossal gatherings where millions danced together beneath skies filled with swirling constellations and auroras engineered by Zix3 artists. It was here that humanity truly shone. Our unrelenting energy, our refusal to let exhaustion or inhibition hold us back. It captivated everyone who witnessed it. By the end of the Infinite Festival, there was no doubt left in anyone's mind. Humanity had earned its place in galactic history not through conquest or invention, but through celebration. But this newfound fame came with its own set of challenges. The transformation was staggering. Humanity, a species once seen as fragile and volatile, was now the most sought-after presence in the galaxy. We became a living legend, a symbol of unrestrained joy and boundless creativity. It wasn't just our music or our raves anymore. It was us. The way we lived, the way we celebrated life itself, became a commodity more valuable than any mineral or technology. And with that, humanity found itself at the center of an interstellar cultural revolution. The Zix3 were the first to formalize it. They established what they called the Human Exchange Program, a system designed to bring human ambassadors of celebration to planets across the galaxy. These weren't diplomats in the traditional sense. They were artists, DJs, chefs, dancers, anyone who embodied the spirit of humanity's unique culture. Entire fleets of Zix3 ships were retrofitted into mobile rave hubs, complete with sound systems so advanced they could manipulate gravity itself to enhance the experience. Other species quickly followed suit. The Clivans, a race of aquatic beings who communicated through intricate patterns of bioluminescence, invited humans to their underwater cities to teach them how to incorporate rhythm into their luminous displays. The Thrixians, whose crystalline bodies resonated like tuning forks, began hosting collaborative concerts where human singers harmonized with their natural frequencies. Even the stoic Varnock collective, a hive-mind species known for their rigid pragmatism, found themselves drawn to humanity's chaotic charm. They started hosting unity dances, where millions of their drones would synchronize with human beats in displays of communal euphoria. With every new partnership, humanity's influence grew, and so did our wealth. At first, it was simple. Aliens paid us in resources we had once dreamed of, but never thought we'd possess. Rare metals that made our strongest alloys look like paper. Energy sources that burned for centuries without diminishing. Biological compounds that cured diseases we'd battled for millennia. But soon it wasn't just about material goods. The galaxy wanted access to us. Our creativity, our passion, our ability to turn even the bleakest moments into something worth celebrating. Corporations formed around this demand, offering exclusive contracts for human performers and event organizers. Entire industries sprang up overnight. Interstellar tour agencies specializing in human experiences, fashion lines inspired by rave culture that blended alien aesthetics with neon and glitter. Even theme parks where visitors could simulate Earth's wildest festivals. Earth itself became a galactic playground for the rich and curious. Cities like Ibiza, Tokyo, and Rio de Janeiro were transformed into sprawling metropolises designed to accommodate alien tourists. Skyscrapers were retrofitted with zero-gravity dance floors. Beaches were lined with bioluminescent sand imported from Zix3. Forests were filled with holographic installations that reacted to sound and movement. Every corner of the planet buzzed with activity as humans and aliens mingled in ways no one had ever imagined. And yet, amidst all this prosperity, something strange began to happen. Humans started leaving Earth. At first, it was just the artists and performers, the ones who wanted to share their craft with the galaxy firsthand. But soon it was engineers designing sound systems that could withstand black hole vibrations, architects building floating clubs above gas giants, entrepreneurs establishing entire rave colonies on moons and asteroids. Humanity spread like wildfire across the stars, not as conquerors or refugees, but as pioneers of celebration. These rave worlds, as they came to be known, became hubs of galactic culture. Each one was unique. Some floated in nebulae that shimmered like liquid light. Others orbited pulsars whose rhythmic pulses served as natural metronomes for endless parties. The largest of these worlds, dubbed Euphoria Prime, was constructed entirely from scratch using materials donated by dozens of species. It was a planet-sized festival where every biome pulsed with music and every city glowed with neon brilliance. With this expansion came unimaginable wealth. Humanity controlled not just resources but culture, something no other species could replicate or replace. Our influence extended into every corner of galactic society, from politics to fashion to entertainment. Alien leaders sought human advisors to help them modernize their traditions. Corporations hired human consultants to design products that captured even a fraction of our creative spark. But there were whispers too, rumors that not everyone in the galaxy was thrilled with humanity's meteoric rise. The galaxy had never seen anything like it. Planetary raves. Entire worlds transformed into pulsating spheres of celebration, their surfaces alive with light, sound, and movement. From the smallest moon colonies to sprawling megacities on alien homeworlds, the phenomenon spread like wildfire. The Zixtari were the first to attempt it, of course. They had taken humanity's teachings to heart and pushed the concept to its absolute limits. Their crystalline plains became dance floors stretching for thousands of kilometers, their skies filled with synchronized auroras that pulsed in time with the music. But even with all their technology, all their newfound creativity, there was something they couldn't replicate: rhythm. It was maddening for them. No matter how hard they tried, no matter how many humans they studied or how many lessons they took, they couldn't quite grasp the essence of rhythm as we did. Their movements were precise but lacked the looseness, the groove that came so naturally to us. Their harmonics were beautiful but too structured, too perfect to capture the raw energy of a human beat drop. It wasn't just a skill they were missing. It was something deeper, something woven into the very fabric of what it meant to be human. And they weren't alone in their frustration. Across the galaxy, species who had embraced rave culture found themselves hitting the same wall. They could mimic our dances, remix our songs, even invent instruments that made sounds we couldn't dream of. But when it came to rhythm, to the primal pulse that drove us to move and feel and connect, they fell short every time. This only made humanity more revered and more valuable. We became not just performers but masters, keepers of a secret that no amount of technology or study could unlock. Alien civilizations began offering unimaginable riches for even a single human instructor to visit their worlds and teach them how to find this elusive groove. Some species went further, attempting genetic experiments or neural enhancements in hopes of bridging the gap. None succeeded. The planetary raves continued regardless. How could they not? The aliens had tasted joy on a scale they'd never known before, and they weren't about to let it go just because they couldn't match us beat for beat. But every planetary rave had one constant: humans at the center of it all. We became galactic celebrities in a way no one could have predicted. DJs from Earth were booked years in advance for events that spanned entire continents or oceans on alien worlds. Dancers were flown across star systems to lead crowds of millions in movements that defied gravity and biology alike. Even ordinary humans found themselves treated like royalty simply for being what we were. And yet, amidst this universal adoration, tensions began to simmer. Some species resented our dominance, not out of hatred, but out of envy and frustration. They saw us as gatekeepers of something they desperately wanted, but could never fully achieve. Whispers began circulating in the darker corners of the galaxy. Conspiracies about humans hoarding their rhythmic essence. Rumors that we were deliberately keeping aliens from mastering our craft to maintain our position at the top. It wasn't true, of course, but perception is often more powerful than reality. The first sign of trouble came during a planetary rave on Clivath 7, an ocean world where bioluminescent creatures lit up the waves like living disco balls. A group of alien performers attempted to take over the main stage without human involvement, a bold move meant to prove they didn't need us anymore. The result was awkward. Their music was technically flawless but lacked soul. Their movements were synchronized but lifeless. The crowd, millions strong, grew restless within minutes. And then Maya appeared. Yes, that Maya, the DJ from Detroit who had ignited this whole revolution back on Earth. She hadn't planned on performing that night. She was there as a guest, enjoying her semi-retirement after years of galactic stardom. But when she saw what was happening, she couldn't help herself. She climbed onto the stage without saying a word and plugged in her ancient Earth-made controller. A battered piece of tech that looked laughably primitive compared to the sleek alien equipment surrounding her. And then she dropped a beat, so powerful it felt like the planet itself was vibrating in time with her. The crowd erupted. Aliens who moments ago had been standing awkwardly now moved with wild abandon, their bodies finding rhythms they hadn't known they possessed. Even the performers who had tried to replace humanity found themselves swept up in the energy, abandoning their pride as they joined Maya on stage. When it was over, when the last note faded into silence and the bioluminescent waves settled once more, there was no question left in anyone's mind. Humanity wasn't just part of galactic rave culture. We were galactic rave culture. But this moment of triumph brought with it an unsettling realization. If aliens could never truly replicate what made us special, what would happen if we disappeared? The galaxy was on the brink of annihilation. Centuries of simmering rivalries, territorial disputes, and ideological clashes had culminated in an interstellar powder keg. Entire fleets hovered on the edges of contested star systems, their weapons primed to unleash destruction on a scale no one had ever witnessed. The Galactic Accord, once a beacon of unity, had fractured under the weight of its members' grievances. Diplomacy had failed. Treaties had been torn apart. It seemed inevitable that the universe would descend into chaos. And then humanity did what humanity does best. We threw a party. It wasn't just any party, though. This was the Final Rave, an event so ambitious, so absurdly audacious, that it could only have been conceived by the species that had turned celebration into an art form. The idea came from Maya. Yes, that Maya, who had long since retired to Euphoria Prime but still wielded enough influence to make even the most skeptical alien leaders listen. Her proposal was simple. Instead of fighting, let's dance. At first, the idea was met with incredulity. How could a rave possibly resolve conflicts that had spanned millennia? But as Maya reminded them, humanity's greatest strength wasn't its technology or its armies. It was our ability to bring people together through music and rhythm. You've seen what we can do, she said, her voice echoing across countless communication channels. We've united species who thought they had nothing in common. We've turned strangers into family. If we can do that on a dance floor, why not here? Why not now? The galaxy listened. Preparations for the Final Rave began immediately. It would be held on Unity 1, a massive artificial planet constructed in neutral space specifically for this purpose. Every species in the Galactic Accord contributed to its creation. The Zix-3 provided their crystalline architecture. The Clivans filled its oceans with bioluminescent life. The Thrixians embedded resonant crystals into its core to amplify sound waves across the entire planet. Even the Varna Collective, reluctant as ever, sent drones to assist with logistics. When the day finally arrived, Unity 1 was a masterpiece, a living, breathing monument to collaboration and creativity. Its surface was divided into zones, each tailored to the unique preferences of different species. Zero-gravity dance chambers for those who floated, underwater arenas for aquatic beings, sprawling deserts lit by holographic suns for those who thrived in heat. At its center stood the Pulse, a colossal stage equipped with technology so advanced it could synchronize every beat, every light, every vibration across the entire planet. The humans arrived last, as was tradition. Our delegation included not just DJs and dancers but historians, philosophers, and even children. Because this wasn't just about music. It was about showing the galaxy what humanity truly stood for. As Maya stepped onto the Pulse to deliver her opening address, you could feel the tension in the air, or rather, the lack of it. For once, there were no weapons aimed at each other, no fleets ready to fire at a moment's notice. There were only beings from every corner of the galaxy waiting to see if this crazy human idea could actually work. My friends, Maya began, her voice calm but commanding. We stand here today not as enemies or rivals, but as beings who share this vast and beautiful universe. For too long, we've let our differences divide us. But tonight we celebrate them. And with that, she dropped the first beat. It was unlike anything anyone had ever heard before. A fusion of human rhythm and alien harmonics that seemed to resonate with the very fabric of reality itself. The bass line hit like a supernova, The melody soared like starlight across an endless void. And then came the drop, a moment so powerful it sent shockwaves rippling through Unity 1's atmosphere. The response was immediate. Species who had once been locked in bitter conflict found themselves moving together in perfect harmony. Tentacles intertwined with hands. Wings beat in time with stomping feet. Bioluminescent patterns synchronized with laser displays that painted galaxies across the sky. Even those who had never danced before, who didn't even have bodies designed for dancing, found ways to join in. For hours, no days, the rave continued without pause. Delegates who had once refused to speak to each other now laughed and embraced as if they'd been friends their entire lives. Soldiers who had spent decades preparing for war laid down their arms to join conga lines that stretched across continents. And then something extraordinary happened. Rhythm began to spread. The aliens who had struggled for so long to master humanity's groove suddenly found themselves moving with an ease they'd never known before. It wasn't perfect. There were still missteps and awkward pauses, but it didn't matter anymore. What mattered was that they were trying and succeeding in their own way. By the time the final rave ended, something fundamental had changed in the galaxy. The rivalries that had once seemed insurmountable now felt trivial in comparison to what they'd experienced together on Unity 1. Treaties were rewritten not out of necessity, but out of genuine goodwill. Alliances were formed not out of fear, but out of friendship. Humanity emerged from the final rave, not just as cultural icons, but as true leaders. A species whose greatest weapon wasn't destruction but creation, whose legacy wouldn't be war but unity. And as Maya stood on the pulse one last time to bid farewell to her galactic family, she couldn't help but smile. "Remember this night," she said softly but firmly, "because this is what we're capable of, not just humans but all of us. And somewhere deep in space, on planets where wars had once raged unchecked, beings danced beneath alien skies and remembered what it felt like to be alive together."